This episode is the leather community, the power dynamic of the leather, and sexual liberation. Can we talk about the history of leather culture and also like the scenes that are very popular? Of course, you know, Chicago, San Francisco.
That's true. Like the James Dean types, the motorcycle, the bikes, the leather jackets. I mean, you know, but from my point of view and what I've learned, you know, there were men that left out of World War II, and they were used to having their drill sergeant. You know, that was their dom, that was their daddy. You know, that was their sir. That, you know, that so that day-to-day instruction and guidance. You know, some men needed that in order to live, you know, in order to survive, in order to continue. And, you know, but going back to the history, you know, they were, you know, men who wanted to be with men at the time. They needed something. And that's where the motorcycle clubs had that camaraderie. And that's where, you know, some of that kink did happen. And there were some initiations, and it was a big thing, and it was very private, you know, and there would be runs, they called them, you know, some of them still exist today with certain leather clubs, you know, where they spent a weekend together. And, you know, there were ceremonies when somebody learned, you know, how to polish boots and maintain them. And then there would be a ceremony where they would be given a pair of boots among the community by their sir, their daddy. You know, I mean, there was a lot that was more involved in that. And, you know, as romantic as it seems, and some people really want that, you know, and we've got people that just go ahead and buy their stuff. I mean, it's just change. Our whole culture has just kind of evolved in a different way. Yeah.
Can we talk about Mr. Leather?
Yes. In Chicago, it happens Memorial Day weekend, and it's called International Mr. Leather. Mm. And they also have the International Leather Boot Black competition. And yeah, that's a culmination of leather contests around the world. That people come as a contestant and compete for International Mr. Leather. In the past, it's been a kind of a political activist. And we've had different types of leather title holders who have tackled different topics. I go to an event in July, not annually, but I've been to a few of them, called Dory Alley. And Dory Alley is a section south of Market in San Francisco. And that is a fun event, kind of like a street fair, where, you know, a lot of open exhibitionism kind of happens, because nudity is allowed in San Francisco, but I think it recently was changed. But while it was existing, it was fun, you know. And then there are certain areas where it's kind of sealed off from the public, so there's a little bit more openness, you know, that happens where there's a little bit more nudity and what have you. And it's a great way just to come around and camaraderie with people. Going to the saloon, going to Lone Star, just hanging out, having beers, chatting with the guys, you know, hooking up.
I would love to go into some terms that are used frequently within the community.
Yeah, I mean, for dominance, I mean, the big terms really are daddy, sir, and master, you know.
Okay.
And those are ones, you know, you could, you know, I should also, you know, not discriminate and put mistress in there as well. I mean, those are dominatrix. The authoritative or influential role in a relationship, often abbreviated as DOM or Dom. And those dominants, they have a role, they have a responsibility, and they have a lot of learning to do too. It takes a long time to master, you know, learning how to flog someone, you know, where to land the flogger, you know, what aftercare is. We'll talk about that later, you know. But again, taking power off from a submissive who is relinquishing it and respecting it. That's a huge responsibility. I think that's a really wonderful term definition that you put, because, you know, both authoritative and influential, you know, and that's when we talk about the respect. You know, you are influencing someone's experience, and it's your obligation, your duty to know whether or not that's a first experience or not. And if they have already had experiences, you know, what level of experience do they have? You know, because you don't want to go from 0 to 60 with just two interactions, especially if they've had no experience in certain kinks that, you know, you may want to start turning them on to. Submissive is an adjective, and passive is a noun in your dictionary, which I think is really great the way you've put it together. And you define it as the partner in a relationship, power, play, exchange, or sexual encounter that services a dominant partner. The terms is often abbreviated as sub and referred to within the context of dom-sub relationship in BDSM. This is someone who is aching to give power away, and there are different reasons for them wanting to do that. There are people I've interacted with who have professionally great responsibility and a lot of obligations. And sometimes people have an outlet or want an outlet, such as being a submissive in a kinky way, to be able to give all that responsibility out, to just let things happen, you know, within whatever the constraints that they want. There's a particular person I know that I worked with who was a lawyer, high-powered lawyer, and really enjoyed getting paddled. And the relief that happened from that power exchange, from that responsibility and that trust that they gave me, the release was unbelievable. I mean, that's where you have to know as a dom how to react and how to respond and how to take care of them and guide them when you're finished.
Yeah. And that's aftercare, right? That's
exactly. Yeah. Aftercare is incredibly important as the play, to let them know that they're in a safe environment, to tell them that they're okay, you know, holding them, letting them cry their fucking eyes out, just letting all of that go.
Can we read negotiation?
In BDSM, this is a discussion around the limits, wishes, and demands for a particular power dynamic scene. After discussion, all partners must come to a consensus before engaging in scene play. Negotiation can be very hot. Sometimes it can be even hotter than the actual interaction physically.
So a popular power dynamic is sir as the dominant and boy as a submissive. Can we read the definitions for sir and boy?
Sir, noun, a person who facilitates power dynamic and scene play as the dominant figure. And we use the term, you specified that we use a person because this term can be used in both non-sexual and sexual capacities. Mm-hmm. And don't want to make it gender specific, which I think is important. You know, for boy, a noun is a submissive role in BDSM, leather, and kink play. You also add in the definition that the term pup can also be used. And pup play, puppy, pup, is something that's been around for quite a while in the leather community, and it has its own following. And that's an entirely different type of headspace than being a boy. And I've been to International Mr. Leather where they've had a puppy pen, you know, and it's a big, you know, area that they have, you know, caged up, you know, just like kind of like where you would put puppies in. You know, the top's open and it's just, you know, them in the headspace in their gear, you know, doing what they do as pups.
The LGBTQIA plus community is so large and it's so vast, and you know, it's hard to say that one narrative is someone else's. You know, there's so much culture within this culture, and I think it's so important that these words that are in a dictionary has a face. Yes. That can tell this story, you know.
Right. And the other thing too is, you know, these are my experiences and my interpretations. You talk to somebody else in the leather community, they have a completely different experience. That's and a different motto and way of life.
But we're definitely making sure that the terms that are used, the basic terms at least, that are used within the community, you know, are represented in the dictionary, because it is to represent everybody's experience.
Yeah, because, you know, the LGBTQIA community is complex. There's so many different subcultures.
It is.
It really is, you know. And there are, when you look at that, your book and the dictionary, I mean, there can be a lot of different coming outs, which is you know,
Well,
something
that's
that,
epic. My goal with the dictionary is that, every human being that opens it up can connect with at least one word in there because, yes, it's the LGBTQIA plus community, but we are all human and we all have, an identity expression and we all have a sexual orientation or what we are attracted to and not attracted to. And I hope that, we can dive deep into the dictionary and find words that are relatable to us,
right.
whether it's not, even if it's not part of the leather community, but understanding the dynamic of kinks and fetishes and, and what that does to us. Like you said, the brain is what's producing this sexual or non-sexual arousal.
Yeah. The endorphins are showing up.
Right. Um, so I appreciate you, sharing these terms with us.
Absolutely. I did find the old guard statement, and that's
Okay.
something we haven't talked about. And
Yeah,
we talked
so
about
yeah, there's old guard and there's new guard, right?
correct, yes. And this is something my husband wrote. You know, it was the best way to translate to anybody that we were talking to online as to what our old guard kind of meant. And he wrote, the old guard came about following World War II. Men returned from duty with a strong base of protocol and needed it to somehow continue. That craving was answered in the first motorcycle clubs of the members of which were also the first leathermen. Quote unquote, sir and boy come from these military roots, as do many of the ideas of being a man, responsible, honest, and someone who does as he says and always follows through. Mentorship and training are also born from the military. The best tops fashion themselves after their superiors and learn how to do so from starting on the bottom.
That's
And that,
cool.
yeah,
That's
that was pretty powerful and pretty concise.
when you are referring to dominance or dom, is that those words associated with the dominant figure need to be capitalized, right? So like sir, dominant, daddy, right? And words that are part of the submissive umbrella, like girl or boy, pup, those should be lowercase.
That's the way we always portrayed it. And that's where I think, I think a few people I know do. And again, it's one of these things where when you're doing that or you're giving those types of, prerequisites or demands to your submissive when they're typing to you, it puts you in that headspace. So you're remembering that, all right, I'm talking to my dom. I'm talking to my dom. This is the person I'm giving power to. I want to respect them. I want to capitalize their name, their role, so, and it's, you always refer to them as a role, not their real name. And that was another thing that, we haven't talked about is like, our boys would call us, these are my sirs. Never use our names in public, just to let people know that, there's protocol, and that's part of our protocol.
Let's talk about P-Town because that's where you are right now.
Provincetown, I like to call a magical place, specifically for anybody that comes here. But in terms of a safe haven for the LGBTQIA community, when you come here, pre-COVID, and hopefully once we get through this, tea dance, which everybody goes to, runs from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's a wonderful environment to be in. It really is a magical place. And there, depending on what you want to do, it's a great place to come to kind of recharge and just be who you are.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I really do. Thank you for our conversation.
I'm so happy to be part of this, and I thank you for reaching out and wanting to continue the conversation and do this interview. I think you're doing an incredible job here, and I think it's very important. So thank you.